Huawei has been back at work with its P-series flagships, after a very successful year with their Mate series and the very well received Nexus 6P. The P-series, ever since the P7, was really focused on bringing good photography in a premium device with great build quality and excellent performance. This intention was really made clear with the P8, which used a camera with an RGBW sensor, which made white pixels separate from colour pixels. It had excellent build quality and design, and its release was when Samsung, Apple and really everybody in the smartphone space had to start seeing Huawei as a very real threat in the smartphone game. This year, Huawei has come back with the Huawei P9 to once again take the battle to Apple and Samsung. First, let's take a look at something Huawei is getting good at with their devices, and that's the design of the P9. When you first pick up the P9, you can clearly see it is a melding of the P and Mate series design philosophies. The profile of the P9 closely resembles that of the P8, but now with curved glass on the front and a very slight curvature on the back of the metal unibody, which makes the P9 supremely comfortable to hold. Also on the back is the camera assembly, held in a glass cutout, and under that is a square fingerprint sensor. On the right side of the device, we find a volume rocker and a textured power button, which allows you to differentiate between the two. This is a feature reminiscent of the P8, and has a nice touch and good attention to detail. On the front of the device, there really isn't much, and it's very clean. Just Huawei written on the bottom, with 8MP front camera, ambient light and proximity sensor, and the earpiece which also contains the notification light, and these are on the top. Now, there are quite a few models of the P9 and P9 Plus, and there are different microphones, speakers, and an IR blaster on the Plus version, but it gets terribly confusing, so I'll leave it at that until we can get hold of a P9 Plus to review. Which is like a P9 but with buffed up features, like a better battery, higher colour saturation display, stereo speakers, and an IR blaster, which can act as a TV remote. But we'll save that for a possible future video. It is also worth noting that the glass panels both on the front and the back camera cutout have patterns, and it's a very nice touch. While design-wise I think Huawei has got it spot on. It's an excellent combination of linear design and curves, and it brings through a very bold design without sacrificing user comfort. And did I mention it has no camera bump, which is something I love Huawei for. No complaints when it comes to design. With dimensions, the P9 has a height of 145mm, a width of 70.9mm, and a thickness of just 6.95mm, making it 0.15mm thinner than the iPhone 6s. Moving on to the specs of the P9, the processor is Huawei's own Kirin 955 octa-core processor, with 4 cores clocked at 2.5 GHz for performance, and the other 4 at 1.8 GHz for better battery efficiency. The P9 also comes with 3GB of RAM, which keeps the P9 running very smoothly no matter what you throw at it. Although 3GB isn't the most you can get, there is a 64GB dual SIM version which has 4GB of RAM. Remember what I said about the models being confusing? When it comes to general performance, the P9 is a seriously quick and snappy device, and an absolute pleasure to use. The P9 scored an average score of 94,000 on Antutu benchmark, which is up there with the very best of flagships, but is lower than I would expect, and I have a feeling of why that is the case, which I'll talk about in a second. Graphical performance is excellent. The P9 runs even the most graphically intensive games on the Play Store smoothly. Going back to the point I made earlier about it having a lower score on Antutu than I would expect, the P9 runs games on the Play Store fantastically, but when testing on Antutu for 3D performance, the P9 performed horribly, poor optimization between Antutu and the P9's GPU being my guess. Otherwise, I would expect it to score above the 100,000 mark like the Galaxy S7. When it comes to storage, this model of the P9 comes with 32GB of internal storage, and the ability to add a further 128GB through microSD. So ample space for storage, but I would have liked to see Huawei support 200GB of additional storage, which is being seen on a few other flagships today. Moving on to the display, the P9 has a 5.3-inch IPS LCD Full HD display at 423 ppi, which still beats the display found on the iPhone 6s, but doesn't quite stack up against Samsung's 2K Super AMOLED displays. But Huawei's always preferred to sacrifice on pixel density for better battery life. And it's a sacrifice that makes sense, because at 423 ppi, you won't be able to see the individual pixels anyway. But why Huawei still hasn't chosen to use a Super AMOLED display is still a mystery to me. This being said, the display on the P9 is by no means bad. It has very good colour reproduction and contrast, and it's very bright as well. But Huawei's choice of staying with a Full HD display really does pay off when it comes to battery life, like it has in the past with the P8. Now, let's move on to the main focus of the P9, and that's of course its cameras. The P9 has a pair of Leica certified cameras, which consist of a colour sensor and a monochrome sensor. This is very much the same logic as in the P8, which allows for much better colour reproduction. The two separate cameras cross over to accurately calculate distance for precision focus, and has a laser rangefinder for accurate macro focus. The 12 megapixel cameras produce some excellent photos, with good clarity and colour reproduction. I think that two 16 megapixel cameras would have been the icing on the cake, but two 12 megapixel sensors allows for better colour. The P9 has quite impressive low light performance, much better than in the P8. Here you can see how well the camera can stabilise and analyse freehand pictures in low light shots. In low light, the P9 has a two-tone LED flash which also works very well. Less impressive than its photos, however, are the videos which the P9 records. Although it can record 1080p videos at 60fps, which is good, but it really is lacking when many other smartphones like the iPhone 6s and the Samsung Galaxy S7 can record in 4K, albeit at a lower frame rate. This is the same as what we found in the P8. As competitors started to move towards UHD and QHD video, Huawei kept with Full HD video, which was just about acceptable last year, but for a mid-2016 release, this is starting to become a bit dated. This being said, the videos the P9 records are of good quality, however clarity does suffer. Other nifty features on the P9's camera are features like light painting, which is cool in theory, but would, in practice, need equipment like tripods. Along with this is a full set of pro camera tools, which allows you to adjust everything from white balance to manual focus. In short, the camera on the P9 is excellent for taking photos, but is starting to lag behind in terms of video resolution. I also think that Huawei has overhyped the cameras to begin with, which left me slightly disappointed when I actually tested the camera. But the camera on the P9 is excellent and up there with the very best mobile cameras on the market today. Another very important thing in a phone is its battery. It's no good having great features if you can't use them for very long before being stuck next to a power outlet. The P9 is the odd one out for Huawei when it comes to battery life, especially when Huawei's Mate series, which have seen much success recently, stress the importance of having a battery life that could in some cases last 2 to 3 days. Don't expect the P9's battery to last 2, let alone 3 days. Although the P9 does have better battery life than some flagships, thanks to its 3000 mAh battery, and nifty software optimization by Huawei to reduce power consumption, it is slightly lower than what we have come to expect of Huawei of late. We got around 10 hours of continuous video playback with airplane mode on, which is excellent. And in daily use, the P9 will just get you through a day of moderate to heavy use, with around 15 to 25% at the end of the day. More surprising than this is that Huawei has included neither wireless charging nor fast charging in the P9, which is becoming more commonplace in the case of wireless charging, and almost an industry standard when it comes to fast charging. Without fast charging, the P9 charges from empty in about an hour and a half through its USB-C connector. If you are a very heavy phone user, you will either have to buy the P9 Plus, which has a bigger battery, or look elsewhere for something more suitable. Software-wise, Huawei's phones have always suffered as a result of Huawei's reskinned Android Emotion UI, which on the P9 runs on top of Android 6.0 Marshmallow. Huawei is getting better with their software, and it is becoming more and more functional rather than detracting from a pure Android experience. But Huawei still has some way to go before reaching levels of integration like Samsung's TouchWiz. For me, Huawei's use of their own reskin of Android has always held their phones back, and although less so with the P9, this is still the case. Connectivity-wise, there is the standard LTE, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. The P9 also has NFC and GLONASS for satellite navigation. The last thing I'm going to mention is the speaker on the P9, which produces a maximum volume of 92 decibels, which is decent. But the sound quality of the P9 isn't anything special. Although the sound is crisp, there isn't very much when it comes to bass. The P9 Plus has stereo speakers, which use the main bottom speaker for bass and a modified earpiece for treble, but we can't comment on how that sounds until we can get hold of one. The P9 comes in several different colours, such as grey, like our unit, rose gold, silver, ceramic white, and champagne gold, along with different finishes in the P9 Plus edition, such as a fine brushed hairline. In the UK, the P9 is currently retailing at £450, which is quite a bit cheaper than other flagships, such as the iPhone 6s and the Galaxy S7. With its fantastic cameras, excellent performance, beautiful design, and decent battery life, along with its slightly lower price tag, the Huawei P9 is one of the best smartphones of 2016. Although there are still improvements to be made, especially in the software side, Huawei can finally be proud to say that it is playing with the big boys now, and the P9 deserves consideration as your next flagship smartphone. This has been Sunny at TechRanger.Net. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more of the latest tech.